Today in this video, we're going to be breaking down my group's 14 Ara'Kara run that happened actually last week now. And as you'll probably notice, I'm playing Protection Paladin this time around. It is a tank that I've been thoroughly enjoying throughout the course of the War Within so far, but recently, if you've been living in Iraq, it's gotten some crazy buffs. It's performing very well. It's very tanky. It offers a lot of, interrupts and utility, group stuns, externals, good amount of actually healing as well, though there have been a lot of memes of people dying because of the Paladin, because it leeches health and it can kill you. But nonetheless, Paladin's doing very well. I'm also playing with Resto Druid, Beastmaster Hunter, Elemental Shaman, and Aug Evoker. So not necessarily a meta comp, but a very good comp nonetheless. And in this run, I really want to focus on our general routing and strategy and not talk about the class too much, because I'm not going to pretend to be a super great Paladin player. I just happen to have enough gear to carry myself through 14. But anyways, what we do at the start of this dungeon is a fairly general poll, I guess. I don't think anything we do in here is like too crazy or too innovative. I'm going to be pulling everything to the bottom of the stairs, doing my best to get here quickly, especially with all those slows. We're going to be pulling in the crawler off on the right-hand side, as well as the two at the base of the stairs, and I'm going to be tagging as many flyers as I possibly can, because despite them offering very low count, they are count that we do need by the end of the dungeon. The benefit of pulling that right-hand mob off to the side is that our druid, who has tailoring at level 25, can actually pick up the buff that it drops, and we can stun any mob we want for 10 seconds, even stun immune mobs like the mini bosses. So we'll be utilizing that in a little bit. Unfortunately, he picked up aggro on a flyer that was patrolling around there, so I had to go back and pick that up and step on some eggs. Now this next pull is a little goofy because there's a lot to gather here. A lot going on. People want to do damage, so I'm trying to get threat, and I'm trying to make sure we have kicks ready. So I throw a shield at the attendant. I attempt to kick the other attendant, which is marked orange, just to get it onto the mini boss. Now, the start of this pull is very spooky because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of flyers, there's a lot of crawlers dashing around, there's a lot of bleeds being applied, and there's a lot of casts. So what we do is, how we counter this is we have defenses being rolled out, bubble is being committed to remove the bleeds, and we stun the mini boss. He's wrapped in webs, and right when that stun ends, I'm going to kick the Horrifying Shrill. Horrifying Shrill only needs to be kicked by one melee DPS generally, and then everyone else can focus on interrupting the barrages and the attendants. Now, outside of the Horrifying Shrill, I think the mini boss is really not that big of an issue, so you want to try to focus on the attendants so web bolts and barrages don't end up killing your group. Luckily, as a Paladin, we have a ton of Avenger Shield throws, also playing Augmentation, as well as Ellie Shaman. We have a ton of interrupts through things like Eruption, through things like Earthquake. So we're not really too worried about casts. It's just grouping mobs up that we're going to struggle with because we don't have access to something like a Frost Death Knight. The next pull is pretty tame. It's going to be a couple of crawlers as well as one attendant. Now, because we no longer really play Tears Enforcer, we don't have as much AoE pulsating damage like we used to through Avenger Shield. A lot of that damage is now loaded into the dot that gets applied through Avenger Shield. So, because that's being said, it takes me a little bit of time to get threat here. Our Hunter actually ends up getting a bleed on him, so I use Blessing and Protection, which is a very powerful cooldown that Paladins have access to. Web bolts are priority, killing the attendant is priority, and then once the attendant dies, you feel free to chain with pretty much anything. We have a lot of poison dispels in this group, so we're not too worried about the poison dispels. If you can dispel them, great. If you don't have a poison dispel, pray that your healer is paying attention, use a defensive if it's on you, or do what you can to interrupt the cast with things like, in this case, I can use Hammer of Justice, I can use things like Blinding Light. Actually, I don't think I'm talented into Blinding Light this dungeon, but we have plenty of interrupts, I'm not worried about it. Then we let the patrolling crawler pack pat into us. During this time, we're kind of getting a little bit of cooldown recovery. We can't pull the mini boss until we have Ascendance because we want to lust the mini boss. And we want to make sure we go and pick up the tailoring pouch that our druid can do. So he's going to take some time during this pull to go do that. He's leaving right about now. You can see him in the top left corner. He's, travel form, prancing off to go pick up that buff for us. Once these Toxic Ruptures start, I'm able to just kite out these mobs using things like Divine Steed or holding my W key. And I just want to outrange them. I don't want to get stunned. I don't want to take that additional damage because at this key level, it could be lethal if I get hit by many of those. As these mobs die, I'm going to be chaining into the next pack, starting to get my ornaments ready just in case for some reason we don't end up stunning it, though we're going to send the stun right now. So we pop Lust, we pop things like Ascendance. Ascendance should pretty much delete this mob. As you can see, its health is being absolutely annihilated. Luckily enough, we did not get Call of the Brood, but generally you should budget that you're going to get one. So what we would have sent there if we got it was things like Zephyr. We could have also sent Turtle, Astral Shift, Iron Bark, as well as Sack. I also have all my ornaments out just in case we need to leech and share some health there. So all that was available to us just in case we got it. We were prepared for it. We did try this in a 15. We were successful in the 15, living through it, but unfortunately we wiped at 1% on Avanax. So we ended up sending the 14, of course, because we wanted the IO and to time it. Anyways, this pull is pretty good as well. Getting the Attendant up to this mini-boss is definitely difficult. The Avenger Shield helps, but just making sure you have plenty of kicks and knocks is also a good strategy. The biggest thing here is the Poison Cloud. The Poison Cloud actually comes out pretty quick, and if you end up getting caught in it, it will probably kill you, so definitely try to avoid it when you can. Here it is. It's actually on me. Luckily, I was able to avoid it. I almost didn't notice it because it was clipped into the kind of ground there. These crawlers do a little bit of physical damage to the tank, but nothing to be too concerned about. It's really just keeping the poisons under control. And when Rupture comes out, I'm doing my best to not run it over our melee, aka we don't really have any. I'm just making sure that anyone who's in melee isn't getting hit. You can see our Evoker's standing fairly close, so I'm making sure I'm not running him down with the circles. Anyways, there's a little bit of RP here. The boss kind of skitters down below on the webs for a little bit before coming up once all 3 mini bosses are killed. So we're spending this time to clear a little bit more trash. Now, if we had things like cooldown, or if we pull this in a slightly different order, I could always pull this trash onto boss, but I personally want to drink, and we know that we have a good bit of time budgeted to take the time to drink and kill the packs that we need to kill. In terms of cooldowns, I do want to touch on this briefly, though I'm not going to focus on it too much this run. I'm rotating defensives pretty aggressively. If I have wings available, I'm generally relying on that, but I will roll in things like Ardent Defender. Once Ardent Defender, fades, I roll in something like Guardian of Ancient Kings or Eye of Tyr. Once either of those cooldowns fade, I trade the other, and then I'll bubble. You want to bubble pretty aggressively because it's a short CD, and you get a ton of cooldown reduction on it. Now, Avanax is a unique fight. Really quick, I am drinking here. Having drinks as a paladin is very beneficial. It allows you to cast Word of Glory without thinking about it. It's a damage increase by able to spamming Word of Glory. It's a survivability increase on your group spamming Word of Glory. So you definitely want to utilize it often when you have those Shining Light procs. Anyways, keeping the boss relatively centered so our range can quickly swap to the ads when they do pop up. You can see our Hunter's able to swap pretty quickly, our Shaman's able to swap pretty quickly, and we're going to I'm going to send Divine Toll to get a little bit of extra damage there as well. And the big thing for tanks is Alerting Shrill does a lot of damage to you. It won't kill you, but what will kill you is the melee attack or the tank buster following Alerting Shrill because you're already low on health. So using defensives aggressively here is very good. Also, making sure you're trying to keep your group alive is very good. A lot of tanks have access to group cooldowns or group utility, Paladin obviously being the best. So I'm going to spend a lot of my time on this fight trying to use Hand of Sacrifice on people, sending my Armaments on people, and sending things like Blessing of Sacrifice. Alerting Shrill is physical damage. I've been told that it possibly ignores armor, but nonetheless, it can be negated with physical damage immunities or physical damage reductions. Anyways, keeping, again, the boss relatively close to add so we can swap quickly, slowing them, rooting them, and making sure we're not fixating them underneath the boss so he ends up gobbling them up. Every time there's a Gossamer onslaught, we try to stack as best we can and move as a group to keep the swirls nice and controlled. Next set of ads are way across the room, so I'm going to reposition the boss a little bit to be a little bit closer. And our group is generally trying to stay inside of Leafluorescence because that is group healing from Spring Blossoms. It makes the healer able to do more throughput, especially when playing specifically with the Resto Druid. All right, so the next set of ads, I think we had a sentence for the last set of ads, but anyways, this pack is going to just absolutely get deleted from things like Stormkeeper and, of course, Earthquake being sent down. Gossamer Swirls, again, we're trying to stack, we're moving as a group, and we're staying as close to the old webs as possible. And we're looking where the next set of ads are spawning, which is going to be across the room once again. Here, I end up committing Ardent Defender. I wasn't in my Consecration, it faded just beforehand. And I popped Guardian of Ancient Kings. A little bit of a mistake on my part. I should have been more prepared for it. I should have had Consecration down. I should have had a DR out quickly. It was a panic reaction that I just sent everything. I could have been using Bubble more as well. I've had Bubble like the whole fight. I lay on hands way earlier, but I'm about to have it back. And I still have Blessing of Protection, which I think I end up using on the next set of Alerting Shrill. Anyways, another set. We're underneath the boss, just dropping more poop. I think eggs spawn kind of right here to our right. So I ping. Our range are going to kind of position themselves so they're able to hit them right away, and I'm going to be committing Divine Toll. I got to be better about leaving my little cons down because I keep not having it. Really good counter of this damage our group is doing through Armaments, through healing, through just making sure people are banking their cooldowns. I'm divine tolling over there to make sure I'm getting extra damage out. And then at this point, once the boss is like sub 25, well, it depends on your group damage, but I would say roughly around the 25% mark, you can tunnel, which means you want to crowd control ads, CC them, apply slows, and just focus on boss damage. Now, unfortunately, we probably got the worst egg spawn that we possibly could have. I could have ran the boss quickly, but I didn't want to make a big movement while a loading stroll was about to happen. So we plant, what we're going to do is we're going to CC the mobs and just send tunnel on the boss. I used Blessing of Protection to immune my Shaman from the damage there, so our healer can focus on other people. He had Astral Shift, and I think we also gave Bark to him, which was a little bit overkill, but we end up being fine for the most part. And just like that, the boss goes down. So one thing you're going to notice I'm doing here is I'm actually sitting down to drink once again. I want full mana going to the next pull, so again, I can Word of Glory frequently. It will save you time in the long run if you're able to actually Word of Glory without thinking about it, than having to think about it and actually worry about your Word of Glory spent. Maybe it's a coward play to constantly drink, but the amount of damage that our group's able to do, we're going to have plenty of time. So having a couple of drinks here and there is definitely going to save you time, especially if you're waiting for patrols, definitely if you're waiting for boss RP. There's a lot of things you can utilize here. Now, I should have been a little bit more aggressive with my taunting and my damage here. I was trying to wait to use Divine Toll to group everything up. Now, the problem with the assistants is sometimes their shit will Fervent Strike, which means that it's going to attack not the tank, not the primary target, but whoever is closest, which ended up happening there to our hunter. He died because I didn't get threat immediately, and the strike fervented. So we're waiting to chain a little bit here because I want to give him time to get back to us. Luckily, the run back's pretty quick because they can now use the flyer. And then we're just pulling in basically the entire bridge, doing big damage. I could have been a little bit better here about my defensives. I had Eye of Tear available. I think I end up letting my consecration expire, which makes me take a lot of damage here. You can see that weak aura in the middle of my screen popping up saying no cons, which means I am playing poorly. But anyways, the priority here is generally the Blood Guard, but you do want to keep the Web Mage interrupted. And then once the volley cast starts, if you spam stun it or spam knock it down or CC it, it'll keep trying to recast volley, which is a longer cast, and if it happens to get off, it does way less damage than a bolt. So generally speaking, you kick bolts, let volley go off, and or keep locking it down until you have your kick cycle back up, and that's when you want to interrupt it. Extraction strikes can be blocked. Paladins are very stable here as long as they have all their CDs rolling. And we're going to chain into the next pull. Now, one thing that my group does that I don't think a lot of groups end up doing, though I prefer this route, is going right. Going right has a lot of benefits. There's a second Blood Guard, which is worse because there's more DR, but there's significantly less kicks. Now, of course, we could go right because we have plenty of interrupts and kicks and knockdowns, but I like this way. It feels a little bit safer, feels a little bit more tame. The only thing is you have to deal with one more Blood Guard. I also like the count in this area a little bit better, going to the right instead of to the left. So we're just kind of right now vibing. We're making sure we're kicking web bolts. If the volley goes off, we can dispel, we can heal through it. The way that it works is it's a very, very small absorb that doesn't seem to scale with key level currently. So if it goes off, your healer at this item level should be able to remove it almost within a global. So it's never going to be an issue here. We do have a couple of kicks that we're letting go through. We definitely want to make sure we're landing them on the web mage. Our evoker ended up kicking there. We're letting this go. Our shaman kicked the volley, which again, we should delay, but we just kicked there. I end up not kicking the bolt, but then I throw an Avenger Shield, and it's just simply locking it down. These pulls are very tame. You are going to lose out on a lot of AoE damage, but if you prio damage the Blood Guard down, again, I find that this route is safer. So I noticed that the patrol is coming into this next pack. Because I noticed that, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drink. We're going to wait a few seconds to be able to just nuke the stag shot. I don't even end up drinking here. This would have been a good time to drink. I don't want to pull the Blood Guard with the stag shell because we want to be able to blow this guy up as fast as possible. While you can stun when the Blood Guard's in the pull, it's just obnoxious to be doing 50% reduced damage to it. So we want to try to nuke it as fast as possible before chaining in the Blood Guard, which I'll do here in a second. All the Blood Workers go down very quickly, and then here's that chain. I'm going to throw a Judgment to get threat. I'm going to throw an Avenger Shield to get threat. Make sure I'm putting down my consecration, and we are vibing. Again, priority now is the Blood Guard because it's giving everything a 50% DR, but we do want to make sure we're kicking the web mages. Those star web mages at 15%, which hopefully will die pretty soon here. And then, of course, we have the other web mage who's still very high, but once there's only one caster, the pull becomes a little bit more tame. Earthquake does wonders on pulls like this. You can see that mobs are constantly getting knocked down over and over again, which is very, very convenient. It's something that I think people don't really realize. Like, people are like, wow, Earthquake does a lot of damage. But not only does it interrupt casts as well, because it's knocking mobs down, it doesn't diminishing return with other things like stuns and like knockbacks and shit. It just has its own diminishing return on it. And because they're knocked down, they're not auto-attacking, which means, generally speaking, it is a tank DR as well, which is very, very convenient. It'll delay auto-attacks and push them back over the course of the pull, meaning that you're taking less damage from auto-attacks. Ellie Shaman by itself is already really good, but one of the benefits of playing with Ellie Shaman outside of them being meta, or very strong in the current meta, is that they have a ton of interrupts in CC. Waiting for the Bloodguard to die, I want to be a little careful with these assistants because again, these extraction strikes, sometimes fervent, don't know why. And then we're going to go into this next pull. Now, ideally, what we're going to do is we're going to knock Skull to be closer to X and Star. I believe our Hunter is going to go over there to knock it in. Did a great job there. And we're just going to make sure we're CCing these guys. I'm not really worried about our group CCing because we do a ton of damage there. Of course, we get a Ascendance proc, and that just nukes that pack there. And then we'll be heading down to the last pull before second boss. And this is where the dungeon gets very exciting. This pull is obviously fun. It's obviously, well, you have a 50% DR, but it's all blood workers, which are just kind of fun to pat on. They don't really do much to the tank. They just charge random people and they melee the tank. So as long as you have your defenses rolling, you'll be absolutely chilling. I do want to fast forward a little bit here because this pull does take some time. So jumping forward, the Bloodguard is about to die and we're going to be going into the next boss. I'm going to get a little bit of mana here. I just want to be healthy again. I don't want to think about my Word of Glories. I want to be able to just send them when I need to, get cooldown reduction as often as I can, and then I'll be able to drink again after the boss fight. Generally speaking, I would say you go after about 3.5, 4 minutes if you're aggressively Word of Glorying on every Shining Light proc. Sometimes you can force yourself to go a little bit quicker, but you want to aim for like the 3-4 minute because that's how long boss fights should take. Hand of Sacrifice goes out on our Druid. He also goes Bear Form to make sure he's negating as much damage as possible. That charge is physical damage, so Blessing and Protection, very strong. You can also dodge it just by running out of the way quick enough, but we have plenty of utility from the Paladin here. These adds are also pretty important to make sure you're kicking and bringing to the center of the room because the boss, when he phases like this, will always go to the center of the room. So kick, don't stun, only stun if you absolutely need to. Try to kick and bring it to the center. That dies pretty quickly though, especially on this first set. And now something that you'll notice that I'm doing is I'm baiting the frontal to the right side of this ring because it gives my group the most amount of space to work with without having to worry about tornadoes and other, stepping outside of the storm. It makes their job very, very easy. The big thing the healer's paying attention to on this fight is the debuff that goes on individual players. It's a little swarm debuff. You need to spot heal it. If it's on you, use a personal. You also want to try to save the personal for the charge, but the charge is kind of RNG who it's going to go on, of course. Now, we had planned to use Blessing of Protection on that charge, but luckily it went on our Hunter who had access to Turtle. So I ended up saving Blessing of Protection for the next charge that we're definitely going to get in about 40 seconds or so. Every phase you do, he's going to spawn one additional Web Mage, so you just want to, make sure you're budgeting your CDs for that. Web Mages can get overwhelming if the fight goes on too long. I would say killing shortly after this phase is ideal. Roughly around the 3-minute mark is what you're aiming for. A 3-minute kill time, which I think is what we roughly hit. Again, I'm aiming to the right-hand side to give my group the most amount of room inside of the circle, especially when they start dropping these tornadoes. And yeah, this part of the fight should be fairly tame. Tanks, even if you need to step out into the goop really quick, you shouldn't die unless you're doing keys higher than this. But as you can see, we've been in the fight for about 2.5 minutes, and my mana is about 40-ish%, 30 to 40%, which means that I will be within the next minute or two. This next burrow charge or burrowing charge will be Blessing of Protection on our Hunter, so he's able to stand still, not worry about moving. Our Evoker did get clipped there, not a big deal. He has plenty of armor. But making sure that we're just keeping the ad locked down through Avenger Shield, through additional kicks, stun if we need to. Generally only if it's about to die or if it's already in a good spot where people can still hit it. Luckily, we do have a mostly range group, so if it is out far from the boss, it's not a big deal because you can always, have a little bit of extra damage. And at this point, we should be tunneling the boss. I'm just watching the web mage to make sure we're getting kicks. Boss will die, and then we'll move on. So roughly, when you are approaching this last boss area, at least up to this key level, I can't really speak for higher keys in this, though I'd imagine it's probably true at least in 15s, is you want about 10 minutes going to this last area. If you have about 10 minutes left, you're on good pace. You can get this next area done in like 1 or 2 pulls, 2 to 3 pulls, I should say. I'm going to get mana here because I definitely am going to want it. These next 2 pulls are very scary for the tank. I do see the patrol overhead and I plan on pulling it, so I definitely want to make sure I'm getting in here sooner rather than later. Drop Consecration. I have Sanctuary, so I'm getting that continued DR and effect for 4 seconds after I leave Consecration. And it's these swirls that are really scary. Now, we end up using our last tailoring buff on the Overseer to keep it stunned. The carriers are going to jump at random party members, so that's a little bit scary, but outside of the random leaps, most of the damage is going to be on the tank, unless people rip threat. Now, Earthquake makes these things very hard to see. I'm going to cast Freedom there to make sure I can remove the slow. Tiger's Lust also works. I know some tanks struggle with that, so you definitely want to make sure you have like a Freedom in your group or someone else who can remove movement impairing effects. There's a lot of classes that can do that. Shaman can do it with their totems. Supposedly, if they drop like a Healing Stream totem, they can play a talent that'll remove it. But Freedom and Bubble are the things that I'm budgeting for here. Freedom works with every other set, and Bubble works obviously once every 2 minutes. But I like to use Bubble when I'm also going to be taking a lot of damage as well, to just immune the slow and the damage that's going to be incoming. Luckily, we had Shaman with Ascendance there, so that pull died very, very quickly. And now, the rest of our trash we're going to be getting from the left-hand side here. We don't go down mid. I know a lot of groups do. I don't like the Hauler. I think it's a cursed mob. Any mob that forces your entire group to get stunned is not fun for Mythic Plus. It also limits on how aggressive you can pull in this area. The Black Blood drop there was a little annoying. We had to walk around it for sure. I don't know how those spawned. I think our Druid ran through, but nonetheless, we're going to be bubbling very quickly here, I think. This pull ends up getting really scary. The slashes do a lot of damage to the tank. Being 90% slowed at 3 stacks is also very scary, especially once the mobs do their little erupting web mechanic. That's when I like to use Bubble. So I have Bubble here. It's active for 3 more seconds. I'm not standing in the swirls, even though I could, but I'm basically using it to remove the slow for myself as well as immune all damage. So when my group is moving, they don't have to worry about anything else besides them getting to a safe spot. They don't have to worry about my health. They don't have to worry about peeling for me, anything like that. We have assigned kicks to Star and Orange. Everyone's essentially chipping into kick, but our Shaman and our Evoker are the 2 that are kicking. I don't know who's assigned to which. I don't remember because this run was about a week ago or a little over a week ago now. Or about a week ago. And our last bit of percent are going to come from the patrolling mobs off to the right here. Now, unfortunately, we got a little bit of an unlucky pat timing. Generally, you'll pull it in mid-pull. You want to be a little careful because the carriers, when they do leap, if they all leap at the same exact person, someone could die. We got a little fortunate here because 4 of the carriers leaped up, but 1 decided to kind of bug out and go the long way around, which ends up being a little bit more convenient for reducing overall group damage and chance of death. It'll eventually come up here now. Fortunately, we will have to like kind of slowly burn it down with the rest of the group and then single target down the rest of the time. I target it right away to try to get some priority damage on it. But we're pretty much going to finish up our trash around the 24-minute mark. And we're going to have, give or take, 7 minutes for boss, which again is a very good time to have. We don't play this last boss perfectly, but having this much time allows you to play extra safe. Don't worry about boss damage. Just make sure you're not getting sucked in. Make sure you're not getting hit by erupting waves or erupting webs. And of course, making sure you're getting your dispels and not getting hit by waves. Now, I am going to go down on this fight. Just fair warning. But it ends up being a pretty okay attempt. But we do have we blunder a little bit here. We still time the key, but we do have a handful of mistakes. We're going in with 3 battle rises, though. We're feeling very, very good. We only had that one-off death at the right after the first boss with Extraction Strike. Now, I'm putting down Orange Marker because this is where I'm going to be taking the boss, or trying to, at least at the start of the fight. And our Shaman and our Hunter are going to try to be playing very far so they can stay out with webs and so they can make sure that they're not clipping each other with waves. The start of the fight is the hardest, in my opinion, because you have to spend a lot of your energy trying to get as many blood workers down as quickly as possible so people can counter the first suck-in, which is only 15 seconds into the pull. Now, something that's unique to Paladin here is that we have a poison dispel, but we also have a second way to dispel through a talent that allows Hand of Sacrifice to dispel people. So what I'm going to be doing on this very first suck is I'm actually just going to commit Bubble because, first off, I'm getting a ton of cooldown reduction. Second off, my group has limited blood to work with, and I want everyone else who can't counter the knockback to be able to get to a pool, because I'm going to eventually need to run into the goop on the ground. But bubble allows me to at least counter one, so the rest of my group, for the hardest one, in my opinion, to counter it. But what's also nice about this comp is that there are no melee, so I can kind of tank the boss wherever I need to benefit myself, where our range can kind of adapt around the boss, where melee are kind of controlled by the boss's positioning, where obviously range have a little bit more flexibility. So I'm generally going to be dispelling our shaman, and I'm going to be trying to basically keep myself alive through defensives. Later in the fight, I definitely blunder a little bit. I don't spend a lot of time when I'm rooted generating holy power. I don't know why. I think I'm just like blinking out or scared, like I might accidentally like kick or break one of the bloods off of me. This is the wave that kills me, though. I didn't see this coming through boss. I stepped into it. I ended up dying here. Now, luckily, this boss moves very slow, and spell queues often with like swirls and stuff. So luckily, I'm able to get a res and get a quick taunt before it actually ends up going downhill. Now, unfortunately, the only problem that I have with this fight is that the bloods are a little bit harder to pick up when you have a full range group, because they're going to be all over the place. But nonetheless, we're going to be chilling. Luckily, I dodged that wave there. Erupting webs are coming out, followed by this. It's going to be the Cosmic Singularity. Now, I do have bubble in a few seconds, but I'm going to be playing it safe and running far to make sure I can get rooted. Now, I'm going to be using Freedom on someone, which will also cast Freedom on myself right when the cast ends. I'm going to be going center to make sure I can get aggro on all the bloods if I can. And then repositioning the boss to make sure I'm not hitting anyone with these upcoming waves. Now, I can see that one blood is kind of off in Narnia, hitting, I believe, our druid, but I'm going to need to pick him up eventually. Again, it's always like, it's like webs, poisons, and then it's Cosmic Singularity. So just keep that in mind. Now, unfortunately, I am going quite low on mana here, so I have to be a little bit more careful about how often I use Word of Glory. I end up actually dispelling Nama here. I will have Hand of Sacrifice for the next. That one was I committed Lay on Hands. Because I committed Lay on Hands, I do need to run out. Generally, I would probably bubble there. I think Lay on Hands was a mistake to use. I could have used it on someone else or myself later on in the fight. But we now have access to bubble still. Next, poisons are coming out. I am dispelling my... actually, I think I dispel Nama here as well. Actually, I use Hand of Sacrifice on Nama, and then I try to dispel myself, but I keep missing the global. I keep global locking myself, so it ends up staying on me anyways. I should have dispelled there. I would have done less damage. I wouldn't have had to commit Ardent Defender. And then our shaman accidentally stood in a root, and then got killed by webs. So once again, I'm dispelling, or trying to dispel our shaman. It took me a second there. And then I walked into a wave again, but I had bubble. Bubble comes in clutch. And we're pretty much going to end this fight pretty clean. So I'm going to run far this time. Because I committed bubble earlier to remove a poison, I had to run out this time instead of just being able to bubble and stand still. And that was the last suck-in. So pretty much right now, it's just stay alive. I'm going to do my best to try to dispel here. I feel like I was spamming it, and it just wasn't going off. And it finally did. And then I die once again. So I had Ardent there. I could have Ardent. I also had Bulwark. I could have Bulwarked. I also had Divine Toll. I could have done that for a small shield. I think I'm out of mana, so I think that's what ended up happening there, is I didn't have enough mana for Word of Glory. Don't quote me on that. You could probably just rewind and be like, you were wrong. Anyways, that was our very big 14. We jumped from doing 14s or 12s to 14, so we kind of just jumped up 2 brackets. Paladin is very strong this season. Brewmaster content will continue in the very near future. I just felt like sharing this with you guys and hoping that the route explanation and the strat explanations would be helpful no matter what tank or no matter what comp you're playing. All right, let me know how much I fucked up in the comments below. Big shout out to all my Patreon supporters for supporting my channel, because without you guys, I couldn't do content like this. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.